Hi, folks. This is Mark by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D. for the Institute for Dialectical Meta-Realism. Let me start on my day. This has been a really, really difficult one. And it really has nothing to do with the content of this podcast, but I'll share it. So if you are having problems, you will know that you are not alone. As the capitalist world system collapses all around us, many people are having problems. Many people's lives are being ruined or potentially being ruined. Why? The contradictions of capitalism, I think, is the primary explanation. Let me tell you what the two situations are. First one, my friend Steve. He went to a hospital, okay? Was admitted into a hospital. Now, should he have gone to the hospital in the first place? That's not my call. I'm not going to say why he was admitted. Not relevant. But he was discharged, as is commonly the case, into a rehabilitation facility where they gave him and are giving him physical therapy, other types of treatments, medical treatments. I was trying to get him on the phone today. He would not answer my calls. I don't think he wants to talk with anyone. Steve and I started out in the same place. We were both diagnosed with what was then called, in the DSM-1 and later the DSM-2, schizophrenia childhood type, which is now known as autism spectrum disorder. And it went through various other names in between the DSM-1 and now that we are in the DSM-5 TR. We started out in the same place, but we have not ended up in the same place. Now, Steve is older than I am. I am 68. Steve is 75. He has a close friend named Jim. I honestly don't even know what Jim's last name is, who has something called Parkinsonism. I never even heard of Parkinsonism, but I do now. I know what it is. It is the result of long-term use of psychotropic drugs. And so I'm wondering, well, Steve is fortunate not to have gotten it. I guess so am I, but not Jim. It mimics the symptoms of Parkinson's disease, but it is not Parkinson's disease. Both of them live on the second floor of federally subsidized housing. They are both what I would call the subaltern, using Antonio Gramsci's term. They are both the subaltern. Both the subaltern. Both the marginalized, the othered, the forgotten people of this world. The people that nobody really cares about. Well, except people like me. But I've known Steve since 1970. Jim I've only known for about maybe 10 years, and I don't know him that well. I've only met him face to face twice. That's it. But Steve cannot function by himself. He needs an advocate. Why? Well, Steve has no willpower. Even though we both started out in the same place with the same diagnosis, my prognosis was that I would spend the rest of my life on disability, which of course never happened. I am a very, very wealthy man. I guess I'm grateful for that to some extent. Steve is not. So I am in the upper class. Steve is in the lower class. The subaltern is a part of the lower class. There's nothing that I can do for him. When I moved down here to the Rio Grande Valley from the Kansas City area on the Kansas side, my thought was, well, I have an extra bedroom. At that time, I did not know how wealthy I was. I can invite Steve to live in the other bedroom. But then I found out how awful the quality of medical care is in the Rio Grande Valley. We have the highest costs, the highest medical costs in the US after Miami, Florida. We are also one of the poorest regions of the country. Pure and total corruption. You call physicians. Most of them have no one to answer the phone. That's true with most businesses too. You call businesses. Most of them do not answer the phone. I could not have Steve come down here, and I explained to him why. He understood. But now we are 2,100 miles away from one another. And I really cannot help him that much. I bought him a cane with a tripod on the bottom, which I thought would help him to walk better because he was falling all the time. And it's not because of bad knees. That's the reason I thought people generally fell. Not in his case. He is falling all the time because his body is literally falling apart. It's giving way. I and at least one other person who knows him does not think that he has that much more time. As to his friend Jim, I don't know. Since I don't know Jim, really. But Jim also lives on the second floor. They both have to walk down one flight of stairs, carrying their folded walkers in a hand, and the other hand's on the banister. I am terrified that Steve will fall down the stairs. I mean, he falls even in the walker. So I think that my fear is legitimate, more than legitimate. That could very easily happen. I have given him advice. Speak to the property manager. I think he has, but I'm not sure. He says the property manager can't do anything, cannot give him or Jim a first floor apartment. And yet, some brand new residents are being now placed on the first floor. But Steve has no ability to deal with it. Steve literally has almost no personal agency. It is a genuine tragedy, and one that I don't know what I can personally do about. I called up a mutual friend who lives in Philadelphia. Steve lives on Long Island. So really, she couldn't do anything. Then I called another friend who does live on Long Island. I should have called her first. And she dealt with the situation, or is trying to. Here's the problem. Even if Steve gets out of this rehabilitation facility, that will not be the end of his problems. He will still be walking down that flight of stairs with a walker in one hand, holding onto the banister with the other one. What happens if a week later that same rehabilitation center calls him and says, Steve, we think that you should come back. We think you should come back. What do I think Steve will do? Well, I don't know. But I have known Steve since 1970, so I can make a pretty good guess, I think. Steve will go back. The kind of person that Steve needs is an advocate, a personal advocate, because Steve cannot advocate for himself. I do my best to advocate for him. But how can I advocate for him when I am 2,100 miles away from him? I mean, I do to an extent, but there are limitations. I can't go to his place, pick up things. Neither Steve nor Jim really can drive. They're both dependent upon Steve's supposed girlfriend, who was also friends with this guy who to me is Steve's enemy, and I won't mention his name. This guy went into Steve's place and looked at all the prescriptions that Steve was taking. He then went into the center of the yard of the apartment complex and started yelling out the prescriptions that Steve is taking. What would I have done? I would have called the police. Not Steve. Steve is friends with him again. That's the problem. No willpower. No agency. He needs a personal advocate. I hope he gets one, and really, really soon. Because again, I literally don't think that he has much more time left. Even with the advocate, I don't think he will. But without the advocate, his death may be very painful. Like, for example, what happens if he falls in his apartment? I don't think he has one of those devices. I'm reminded of that old commercial, "Help, I've fallen and I can't get up." I don't think he has one of those devices. In fact, I'm almost positive he does not. Maybe I should recommend that to him. But even if I recommend it to him, will he do it? Chances are no. Because again, he has no willpower. Well, no willpower is obviously an exaggeration. More accurately, almost no willpower. Not a sufficient amount of willpower to live on his own. What I am most afraid of, even more than the things I've mentioned, is that Steve will end up in a nursing home. And nursing homes are like death chambers. Those places, they house people as if they are waiting to die. The quality of care is generally not that good. My mother was in a very expensive assisted living facility, a lot better than a nursing home. And even she was often treated very badly. So the way that people are treated in nursing homes generally is a lot worse. I don't want that for Steve, but can I do anything? I don't know. I have no idea. Again, he has a standing invitation to move down here. But I told him that I think that would be a really bad idea. Because however bad the nursing homes are in New York State, they are 10 times worse in the Rio Grande Valley of Texas. He does not want to live here. And I am not a medical professional. I mean, my formal title may be Dr. Foster, although I don't use it anymore. But I'm not a medical doctor. I'm a Ph.D. I have no medical training at all. If Steve got ill, I could not help him. If Steve fell, I could not pick him up. I have osteoarthritis and osteoporosis. I mean, I'm getting up there too at 68. I look younger than I am. I know that. But I know the body that's inside of me. And I'm relatively healthy for my age, I imagine. But what does relatively healthy mean? I don't know. I guess it means I'm not dying or I don't have a terminal disease. But Steve, it's an entirely different story. So, what will happen? Fortunately, the second person that I called spoke with somebody else who knows Steve. And this person will be visiting Steve tomorrow. And we'll keep in touch with Steve. And whenever Steve wants to leave, this person will take Steve back to his apartment. But to what? To a place where he has to walk down the stairs carrying a walker? Again, there's no real solution to Steve's problems. It is difficult when your closest friends in the world, which Steve is, somebody that I've known since I was in my early teens and Steve was in his late teens, is dying. Not literally dying. Maybe a better way of saying it is on the road to death. But there's nothing that I can think of that I can do. I put the matter in the hands of qualified people. One of the people that will now be in charge of taking care of Steve's situation is a medical doctor and not somebody who works at that rehabilitation facility. So Steve is in good hands, I think. I can't imagine what better hands he could be in. I trust these people. I think they will do their best within their power to help him. I think they will. What that power is, I don't know. So that's the first problem. Here's the second one. And I don't know if this is better or worse. I honestly don't know what to make of it. My neighbor, who was a retired professional chef, whose son lives with him. This is a 55 plus condo facility. His son is 47, I believe now. But since he's living with his father, who's 81, that's allowed. Once his father dies, as far as I understand it, he will no longer be allowed to live there unless they can find some loophole. My understanding is they're looking for one, but I don't know what that loophole would be. I was supposed to have lunch with them today at around noon. I tend to sleep late. And so I said, look, whenever you're ready for me, give me a call. I'll keep my cell phone right by my bed. So when the phone rings, I'll pick it up, get dressed, and come right over. I woke up at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The phone never rang. Well, so what did I do? I called them. There was no answer. I got their voicemail. Actually, the son's voicemail. I didn't call the father, I called the son because the son takes care of the father. I also have the father's number, but there's no point in calling him. It will be redundant. So I got the voicemail, as I said, and I left a message. I said, what happened? What happened? You're not there. You were supposed to call me. Is everything all right? I'm worried about you. It was about 10 hours ago. 10 hours ago. I called him back about maybe 45 minutes ago. And I said, I am really, really worried now. What in the world has happened to you or to your father, who is now 81? I mean, his father, as far as I know, is healthy. He doesn't have any chronic illnesses. He walks around very well. No cane, nothing. Seems to be very, very fit for a man of his age. But when you get to that age, there are no guarantees. Anything can happen. Anything. Nobody knows what tomorrow will bring. Well, I mean, that's true with me as well, of course. But especially when you get to 81, the risks become even worse. So again, after leaving that message, that voicemail message, I have still not heard back from his son, his 47-year-old son. And I am good friends with both of them. Really good friends. Really good friends. We hang out together. Typically, I go over and I'll sit on their porch and chat. They both like talking. I like talking a lot, and most people don't. So I found two people who like to talk almost, not quite, but almost as much as I do. But now I don't know what's happened to them. We never had that lunch. The son has never returned my calls, I should say. And so I feel like, what do I do? What do I do? I mean, I guess I could go by and knock on their door, but I really don't want to do that again this late. You know, I don't know what time they go to bed. If they're asleep, I don't want to wake them out of my own personal curiosity and concern. So no, I won't do that. I'll wait till tomorrow. I'll go back and knock on their door, and hopefully they'll be there. And hopefully the father will be okay, or the son will be okay. I don't know what happened, if anything, but I assume something did. They're both very reliable people. They would not stand me up like this. And so, where does that leave me? It leaves me where I've ended up many times before in this series of podcasts: the contradictions of capitalism. I am not in Gaza. I don't know anybody who is now in Gaza. I knew somebody who was from Gaza, my old dentist, but she doesn't live there now. She's been in the United States for about at least 30 or 40 years, I believe. So I think about Gaza all the time, but I don't know anybody who was there right now. These are people whom I know right now, but I'm powerless. There's nothing I can do. And when I say I'm powerless, I am not saying that in the way it's used by the 12-step movement, since those of you who've been listening to me know I am no fan of that movement. When I say I am powerless, I mean I literally am simply powerless in this situation. I can't change it. Maybe I will be able to change it tomorrow, but not now. I'm not looking for some 12-stepper to come by and knock on my door. Maybe that's a bit rude. I'm sorry. I'm sorry if that was rude. But to be honest, between those two things, my friend Steve and his friend Jim, both of them are now in rehab centers, but different ones. Why? Because they have different Medicare insurance policies, supplemental policies, and their policies would not pay for the same place. Otherwise, they would be in the same place. So I don't know what's happened to either one of them, to be honest. I hope they'll be okay, but I don't know. I hope my neighbors will be okay, but again, I don't know. So I am literally in a dilemma. I feel like I'm trapped in quicksand, kind of. And I'm sinking and sinking and sinking and trying to keep on top of the quicksand. So far, I've been successful. In any event, the contradictions of capitalism. Would either of these situations have happened under socialism or communism? With Steve? No. Because we would have a much better medical system. And Steve would not have to deal with all this nonsense. With my neighbors, I have no idea because I don't know what their situation is, whether it's medical or something else. So I can't answer that question with respect to my neighbors, but I can with respect to my best and oldest friend, Steve. In any event, I'm sorry for the somber tone. I realized this was a this was a really negative podcast, and I'm sorry about that. But I thought that it was important to make it. It's kind of like soap operas. There was a study done once as to why people used to like soap operas. I'm not even sure if soap operas are on anymore, like As the World Turns, things like that, maybe. But when I was a kid, they were on. It was kind of like an alternating thing between a soap opera and a game show. I don't know if it's like that anymore because I don't watch TV. But in a way, if my experience can be a soap opera for you, can make you feel better about your problems, much as that research found out that watching soap operas made its viewers feel better about their own problems, then good. I hope it's done that. And I honestly hope that you never have to deal with situations like I am dealing with right now, especially at the same time. And as an autistic, I mean, it would be difficult enough if I were not autistic, but the autism literally makes it worse. It does. Why? I don't know. I guess the cognitive processing of these events, the way that my mind is trying to make sense out of them, something like that. In any event, this has been Mark by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D., for the Institute for Dialectical Metarealism. Have a pleasant day and an even better day tomorrow.